I'm going to be showing you 6 Pell exercises you can do on your own with a longsword. My Pell here is just made up of a bunch of old tires I found. While we were cleaning out the shed, I stack them up and sometimes I knock them over because they're not connected to anything. First thing we're going to be looking at is the Sverhow. I love doing Sverhows on the Pell because it's a good opportunity to practice your accuracy, edge alignment, and in particular, power generation. So what I'm showing here first is how I generate power from my hips rather than from my arms. So I'm pivoting my feet, keeping my knees aligned over my toes. And this works with either leg forward. And then I am practicing the blade work as well, keeping my shoulders down. Now, if you do this on the Pell, both with generating force from your arms and from your hips, you'll really feel the difference. And you'll notice that when you generate power from your hips, it is much stronger and you just have more control. So I'm just practicing here first, making sure I have good edge alignment and that my tip is coming all the way around to the front on those cuts. Now let's try it out on the Pell. I'm not doing any openings here because I'm only working on my Sverhows. We'll add an opening later on. Okay, so just starting out light, making sure I have a nice close distance. I'm not alternating my cuts at all. I'm just doing the high Sverhows, the same alignment, to focus on my force generation here, power generation. As I mentioned, these tires are not attached to anything, so they do slide off once in a while. So let's add in some angle variation here. So imagine you have your partner on the defense and you're Sverhowing them. They're pairing high, expecting you to continue. You can change the angle and cut low and hit them in the hands or the torso. And it's good to practice this so that you have accuracy in where you're landing your cuts. Now I'm changing the angle by using the pommel in my left hand or my non-dominant hand, basically as a lever. So I'm kind of holding the sword in my right hand and guiding the direction with my left hand. Making sure I keep my cross guard high above me the whole time. As soon as you drop your cross guard, your head becomes a likely target. Let's add an opener because you never want to enter an exchange with a Sverhow from distance. So if we're entering from distance, let's start with a thrust. We'll look at thrust in more detail later on, but here I'm just doing a thrust and then practicing that transition into Sverhow. Now you'll notice I'll do it slowly here. I am making sure my cross guard is high. I'm rotating my blade around above my head to keep my head covered the whole time. Changing my grip. I'm making sure that if you're not already in a thumb grip from the thrust, you get into a thumb grip in the Sverhow. At least that's how I like to do it. Practicing distance here and then speeding up that transition, taking care that you do not drop your guard in that transition. Okay, let's try another opener, Oberhow, which is also very common. You are cutting, you imagine that they parry. Again, that transition requires you to keep your cross guard high. Now, most of us, when we do a cut from above, an Oberhow, at least I'm not cutting with a thumb grip. So when I do that cut and I transition to my Sverhow, I'm doing a slight grip change there. You can't really see it in this video, but a Pell is a good place to practice that because you'll really feel when you hit the Pell if you have good control over the blade or not. And now I'm trying the same thing but with an angle change. So I am cutting Oberhow and then doing a low Sverhow to the hands or torso. Maybe they wouldn't be expecting that. They would parry high and you cut underneath their parry basically. I'll also notice here that I am stepping offline a lot. I'm not just cutting straight into the tire. All right, let's look at some true false cuts. So basically cutting around the blade from true edge into false edge. I'll show what that looks like here. I'm cutting around and see how I have that thumb grip transition again in my wield, cutting around into false edge, getting my thumb on the blade there. I like this because you get a shorter cut around. It's a smaller transition and you get an interesting angle with the short edge. And I like to practice this on the Pell because I can feel the power, because sometimes it's hard to get decent power generated from a short edge cut, and also the edge alignment. I sometimes struggle with edge alignment with my short edge cuts. You'll really feel it when you hit the Pell if you're landing with the edge or landing flat. I'm also doing it a few times where I intentionally miss the first cut, and it's as if you're going to cut, somebody parries and you run under their parry. You let your sword run off basically, and you transition straight into that short edge cut. All right, let's move on into thrusting. We did thrusting earlier on, but let's look closer at the mechanics. So I'm making sure that I extend first, then pull with my tip forward, and only once my arms are extended do I do a little lunge. Pell is perfect for this because you can practice your distance. So here I'm seeing how far do I need to be away from the Pell to reach both with just extending my blade without taking any steps, and then with doing a little step or a little lunge. You can also practice by doing several steps in, if you're working backwards and then ending with a thrust. And I do like to practice doing the thrust on from the left as well. Okay, lastly, we're going to very quickly look at force generation, which is basically cutting using your hips. Here I'm not doing a Sverhau though, I'm just cutting to the same side. This is sort of a feint. And I don't go into it very much here, but that's something for later videos. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to send requests.